And action.
Action! Hey guys, last time I did this, we didn't have COVID, and we were at Mystic South, and I had like 250 people in a room. No, actually, I had about 50, but it seemed like 250 because, you know, I don't usually get that many people. Now I'm talking to myself in my study with a brown paper bag, duct taped to a piece of plastic. But having said that, I'm going to give you the same thing with the same stuff, and I'm going to add more. There is a caveat, though. For some reason, I cannot find my cow, so I'm using a Franken duck, and I'll talk about that when it happens, okay? So anyway, let's start it. Let me grab my marker. All right.
Do you want to introduce yourself first, Gyps?
What?
Do you want to introduce yourself first?
Oh, I'm sorry. We're running two conversations here. So, and she said she's going to edit it out, but she's not really. We're just going to run with it. Hi, I'm Gypsy, and I talk a lot, and I talk quickly when I'm in a hurry or when I'm excited. So I'll try to slow it down and be more southern. However, I also have 7 cats and a dog running through the house right now because it's very cold. So they may have something to do with it too. Anyway, I wrote a book called Norse Divination. And the divination part is really, really cool. However, the first part is even better because it tells all the sagas, tells all of our stories, and it gives a more detailed part of cosmology, both the beginning and Ragnarok at the end, which I'm probably not going to cover unless I got enough time, but I don't know. Because I'm also going to add some stuff that I did not add at Mystic South. So that's who I am, but it doesn't matter who I am. What matters is what I'm going to tell you so that you can know our religion and our background and our history, which doesn't make any more sense than any other religion. And I don't really care what religion you are, but no religion makes sense. Let's face it. You know, it's all fake. You know, some old guy is floating around in the dark forever until he gets bored and he turns on the lights. Okay, one religion. A great turtle is holding up a flat piece of earth, another religion, and our religion, which is here. So, in the beginning of our cosmology, and that's not to say that the old white guy, or whatever color he is, that's floating around in space, hasn't already flicked on the lights in his side. But in our side, okay, there was the great void, Ginnungagap. And when Ginnungagap started and formed, there were 2 planets. One was Muspelheim. The other, move it up here, is Niflheim. Okay, so Muspelheim and Niflheim, and I'm going to send something to Pandy so that she can post it at the very end, and you can have the whole thing. Okay, because I'm going to take a Photoshop of this. But in the beginning, there was Muspelheim, and Muspelheim was a planet of fire, big, lots of fire, lots of lava. Niflheim was another place you didn't really want to go to because it was all ice. However, the king of Muspelheim was Surta. Okay, there he is right there, Surta. Okay, I told you this is Legos. And Surta, with his great flaming sword, which is not a metaphor for anything really, ruled Muspelheim. Now, in the middle was Ginnungagap. And as the heat from Muspelheim came over to the ice and cold from Niflheim, a great cloud formed. Okay, and a great cloud formed right there, right? And ice crystals formed, and a giant showed up, and the giant was Ymir. Okay, and Ymir was androgynous. He was also unisexual. He could have more giants coming out from his armpits and a space between his legs. So in the middle of all of this is Ymir, and he's floating around, just kind of pissing out giants and sweating from his glands. Okay? At the same time, there is this great block of ice that's just floating around. And in comes this cosmic cow named Adumla. And Adumla is kind of floating in space here in the void. And, you know, she's wandering upside down thinking, boy, you know, lack of gravity really makes my udders float. But anyway, she starts licking the ice. And eventually a head forms, and then arms, and then legs. And now you have the very first god, an Azir. And his name is, hold that thought, my computers decided they wanted to do funny things. And his name was, okay, Bor, right? B-O-R. And Adumla fed Bor and Ymir with the milk from her teats as she licked the ice. Okay, so now you've got Ymir pissing out giants all over the place, and you've got Bor. So Bor finds one of the female giantess, the giantess, and he has a kid. Now you remember, they're still doing this in airless space. So these gods are like really, really powerful. And he has a son by the name of Buri. Buri, okay? A little god guy, okay? And they are the Azir. And the Azir is spelled just like it looks. A-E-S-I-R, Azir, or Aesir, or the Asir, or the Asir. It depends on which country you're from. Okay, well, so Buri, well, I don't know if he marries because there's nobody to do rituals, but anyway, he has a wife who is a giantess by the name of Besla. And they have 3 children, okay? Vili, V, and Odin. Oh, hang on, my dog. He said, you can't turn the lights off, baby. You just can't do that. That's not nice. Okay, I'm gonna have to shut you out. All right. Okay. Sorry about that.
That was impressive.
And there was darkness. Yes. Okay. Odin. All right. So the 3 of them look around all of this, and they still see a bunch of giants being produced, and there's only their mother and their father and their grandfather that are not giants. So they figure, oh, let's kill Ymir. So they kill Ymir. And they slaughter him, and the blood from Ymir is so intense that it washes all the other giants off and into the void. Not Gedinga Gap, which is the great cosmic chaos, but out over the edge. Okay? Except one giant by the name of Bergelmir and his wife, who was unnamed at this point because she probably had a name, but we don't know. So what they then do, right, is they take the sparks from Muspelheim and they create stars. They cut his head off and take the skull and have 4 dwarfs that were created from maggots coming out of the dead Ymir, named Austri, Vestri, Nordri, and Suthri, north, south, east, and west, and they hold up the sky. So that's the sky. They take the brains and they create stuff. The rest of the blood becomes water, okay? They grind up all the flesh and it becomes earth and trees. They take all the bones, it becomes mountains. So everything there is that they build comes from Ymir. All right, now we're done with Ymir. Yay, Ymir. All right, so when they get to that point, they start building worlds, right? The first world they build is theirs, And since they're gods, they want to have the best, so they put it all the way up here. Now, remember, we're in space, so north, south, east, you know, if you watch the beginning of the original Stargate, you see the whole 6 points. It doesn't matter, okay? But up here is Asgard, okay? The home of the Aesir, all right? And so they're up there, and they've got all sorts of kids, and they're having fun, and they're marrying giants, and they're marrying each other, and they're having sex with their sister, and all sorts of things like that. Yeah, they really do. They'll have sex with anybody, especially Freya. But so there's Asgard. So Odin then says, we need to create other races. So they create humans. And they make two humans, Ask and Embla, Ash and Elm. Okay? There's Ash and Elm. Do not pay any attention to the non-historic horns going the wrong way. Okay? You just need to do a little kid. So this is Ash and Elm, and they needed a place to stick them, so they made Midgard. Here's Midgard. Okay? Midgard is the middle point. All right? So now we have Muspelheim, Niflheim, Midgard, and Asgard. All right. And I know what you're thinking, because I thought it too for at least 5 minutes until I figured it, until I looked it up. These are all realms. However, in the Norse idea, there are two types of realms. There is the civilized, the less civilized, or the park, and the Italians called it the Bosco, which was out in the middle of nowhere, and you didn't want to go there because they had like poison ivy and shit. So anyway, the word guard comes from Utgard, which means the most civilized. Everything else is Inengard, yeah, Inengard, which means not quite as civilized. So even though some of the other planets are really nice, they're kind of like going to Disneyland, but they're still not as nice as Midgard and Asgard, okay? So while they're doing that, they need to connect the two. So they create Bifrost. Bifrost is the Rainbow Bridge, okay? And for any of you that have seen Bifrost or Bifrost, which a lot of us have, because it's the Aurora Borealis. Well, at least that's what, humans call it. The Aesir call it Bifrost. So that is the only way that you can get from Asgard to Midgard. Excuse me. Come on in. Do not shut the lights off. Okay. Anyway, that's my dog, Asa, whose real name is Azir Spathel Baldursson. But he just goes by Asa because, most people can't even spell Azir. And Spathel has letters that the Americans don't even have. So anyway, here's two. We're not done. They then create another bunch of races. And here they are. Okay? I'm going to fill. You've got the land of giants, which is Jotunheim. You've got the land of the dark elves, Spothelheim. You've got the land of the Vanna, which are almost as good as the Asgard, but not quite. And here it's Vanaheim. And like I said, even though it's a really great place to live, and it's all light and sunny, and all the houses are gold and everything, it's still a Heim. Okay? Now you've got the place for the elves, which is Alpine. And the last one, and most important, next to Asgard, is Helheim. Okay, so here are your 9 realms. All right, and Odin says, "Gee, this is pretty cool. I've done like 6 days work. I should take a break. Hang on, I need a drink."
Speaking of breaks.
And I got my drink. I was drinking the same drink 3 years ago but I was less sober when I did it the first time. Okay. So we've got Muspelheim, where Surt lives. We've got Asgard, where the gods live. We've got Midgard, where humans live. See, little humans. I'm a human. We've got Vanaheim, where the really cool, fighty people live. We've got Elfheim, where the elves live. We've got Jotunheim, where all the giants live. And speaking of giants, funny you should go there. Two of the most important giants, and I'm going to speak of them right now, even though we're out of sequence, is Loki and his girlfriend, Angrboda. Okay? Asa, if you really love me, you could hit my mouse every now and then so I can watch my computer monitor instead of playing with your remote. Please don't. Okay. Angrboda and Loki have 3 children. And I'll talk about them eventually in another lecture. But the most important one is the goddess Hel. Even though she's not a goddess, she's the queen of Helheim, and she is the recipient of the dead. Okay? Now, a lot of people talk about her duality, where half of her is dark, half of her is light, half of her is beautiful, half of her is a pestilent corpse with maggots and everything. I personally believe that Hel is getting a really bad rap, because I think she's gorgeous. And if you're not a nice person, you see the bad side of her. And if you're a nice person, you see the good side of her, because everyone goes to hell before they go someplace else. Okay? They just kind of pass through. And if you go into Valhalla or Folkvang, which is Freya's hall, and she gets half and Odin gets half, and I'll talk about that in a minute, they still go through like a waiting room in hell, and then they go up. So anyway, I think hell is a lot cooler than most people give them credit for. All right? And she was there, and she does her job, and we'll talk about that, and maybe we'll talk about Ragnarok, because I want to talk more about hell later. Although I don't pray to hell. I kind of follow Freya. And finally, you got the dwarves, the little dwarves that live in Svartalfheim. They're the dark elves, and they're called dark elves because they live in the dark, but they're really dwarves. Okay, so you got all this. Now, on the 7th day, instead of golfing or having a picnic or like tweeting out something like Trump does, they created Yggdrasil. And Yggdrasil is the world tree. It's a big ash tree. Some people say it's yew, but it really isn't. It's ash. It's not all about you. It's all about ash, And Yggdrasil connects all these. So you've got roots coming up all of these, okay? And then you've got this great trunk, comes up like this. You got branches that come up, it goes all the way up here. You got branches that come out here, and everything is connected to Yggdrasil. All right, and this is how they travel. So even though you can only go to Midgard by going through Asgard, you can go to any of the others any other way you wish, okay? But humans can't do that. They're just kind of stuck like here. It's like living in New Jersey. You can see New York, but you can't get there. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff happening in Yggdrasil. There's like 4 deer that run around. There's a squirrel named Ratatos that goes from the from the base where Nihog is, which is a serpent, and he travels all the way to the top where there's an eagle that doesn't have a name. although that eagle has a hawk that lives between his eyes, and the hawk has a name, but the eagle doesn't. Go figure. Okay. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but it's Verthafirna. So, okay, so I lied. I pronounced it Verthafirna. And there's an eagle, and they go back and forth. Okay. Now, watering this tree, this is the point that drives everybody freaking crazy. All right. Watering this tree are 3 wells. Okay. And each one really does something. So the first well is Urd's well. I'm going to talk about that one last because it makes no sense at all. But the second one is Mimmer's well. Mimmer's well is down here in Jotunheim. Okay? And this is one of the wells. I'm going to put a W there. And Mimmer's is Mimmer's well. Mimmer was a god a long time ago. This is where we, don't you dare fall, you son of a bitch. Okay, so Mimmer was one of the gods that when the Vanna and the Aesir had a war, they decided to exchange people, okay, hostages. The war started because Freya, who is a Vanna, went to Asgard and she knew Sita, magic. And women, only women at the time did Sita. And all the men wanted to know how to do Sita. And she wouldn't tell them. So they got pissed off and they burned her at the stake. And she came back, much like the Phoenix. And they burned her again. And she came back and they burned her again. And this time she came back and stayed. Sort of like the castle in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Okay, the one that keeps falling down in the swamp. All right. So at that point, they had a war. And they realized they couldn't beat each other. So they exchanged hostages. And ironically, Miss Vanna up there, Freya, her brother Freyr, her dad Njord, were exchanged for Mimmer and Honor. Okay? So when that happened, Mimmer was down at Mimmer's Bruna here. And Odin came down and he wanted all this knowledge. And Mimmer said, it will cost you. And Odin said, oh, I'm a god. What could it be? And Mimmer said, I want one of your eyes. And Odin said, oh, okay. And he plucked it out of his head, dropped it in the well, drank, and knew everything. All right? Except how to put his eye back in his head. Anyway. All right. So while they're having their war and getting ready to send hostages, he also decides he wants to go to Urd's well. Okay? And here we go. Urd's well is up here in Asgard. Go figure. Now, roots suck water, right? So that means a root kind of skips past Svartalheim and goes all the way up to the very top of the known universe, to the top of the tree, to Urd's well. Now you tell me how that makes sense, but hey, you know, I'm just telling you the story. I didn't write it. So at Urd's well, Odin hangs for 9 days. And while he's hanging, he sees these runes and he clutches them and he brings written language and magic back to humans and the gods, right? But he also runs into 3 old ladies, well, an old lady, a middle lady, and a young lady, called the Norns, all right? And I'm not going to try to pronounce or write them down. You can buy my book or you can write to me and I'll give you my address at the end and I'll tell you who they are. But suffice it to say it's maiden, the mother, and the crone. You have 3. You have one that represents the future, the maiden. You have one that represents the present, the mother. You have one that represents the past, the crone. I'm putting that for some of you that are not heathen. that are pagan, I really do believe that that's how they fall out. However, the three of them are responsible for each one of us and our fates, because they are the fates. They're the Norns. When you are born, they weave your fate in a tapestry and hang it in the Great Hall in Asgard. Now, can you change it? Possibly. Do you know if you changed it? Probably not. So when you die, even though you might think that you had free will all your life, you may still have done exactly what the tapestry says. And that's a fun part to think about. And you can drink yourself silly nights thinking about that. Am I really cheating fate? I'm going to go here, even though my fate says I'm going to go there. And really, your fate really did say you were going to go there. But anyway, all right. So this is the well. Third well is and it's Kregermere, and it's just, there are letters that just don't make sense. But anyway, it is down here in Niflheim, okay? And there's another well, okay? And my dog is still refusing to hit the mouse for my computer. So I'm back there. All right. I didn't tell you this was going to be easy, and I didn't tell you this was going to be slow. I did tell you it would be fun, and I'm going to drink. I think you should too. Go get a drink. I'll wait a couple of seconds. I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. It was a short break. This is all on tape anyway, so you can just watch it as long as you want. All right, so we now have 3 wells. Okay. We have a whole bunch. Okay, we have a whole bunch of creatures. We've got 9 worlds, and we got Helheim, and we got Nihog. Nihog is a serpent that eats the corpses of the dead when they wash up on the shores of Helheim. Okay, that's one of the things he does. He also chews at the roots of Yggdrasil. So the Norns dig sand from Helheim, and they cover the roots every day as they water the roots. So that means the Norns travel all the way down here every day just to water the damn roots and probably pet Nihog. And then they go all the way back up here for dinner. All right, go figure. So that's basically what we're talking about for the cosmic. But here's the fun part. And here's the part nobody ever talks about. In the sagas, they always tell you that Thor, here's Thor. See, that's Thor because he's got his little hammer. Okay? Thor and Mjolnir, because that's how you pronounce it in Icelandic, not Mjolnir, Mjolnir. He is always out there trying to kill giants. Okay? Now, I want you to think of something. One, he has children with a giantess. His mother is Besla, who is a giantess. His grandmother is a giantess. All right? So Thor is actually as much giant as Azia. But he goes off and he kills giants. Okay? So that's one of those things that just don't make a lot of sense. The other thing is they talk about dwarves being created from maggots, living in the earth, being nasty, foul, dark creatures. Okay? They never say dwarves are big. They never say they're oversized. They never say they're small either. They just say that they're really good smiths and they live in Svartalfheim, right? You've got elves. Everybody raves about because they're so sweet and they come from the world of light and everything, except the dark elves, which are also in Svartalfheim, okay? And then you've got giants. And giants are supposed to be these huge friggin' creatures that Thor camps out in one of their gloves in one of the stories. But yet, Freya sees a giantess and is so enamored by her that he gives away his sword, which means he will die at Ragnarok just to have her. So now I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm the only one that has ever said this probably. And when the book comes out, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of pushback, but I don't really give it back. All of these creatures are the same size. Some may be a little taller, some may be a little smaller. Okay. When you were growing up, you were told there were boogeymen in the closet, or there were monsters under the bed. But in actuality, the monsters lived in Washington and took kickback from big banks and churches. Okay. So I want to go through all of these races and talk about why I think they're no bigger than we are. All right, humans. It all revolves around us, because without us, there are no stories. You know, Snorri Sturluson and Grammaticus, Saxo Grammaticus would not have written anything. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to a computer, hoping that somebody on Saturday is going to listen to this and go, oh yeah, wow, that's really cool. Thank you. Okay? No idea. But if it wasn't for us, there would be no stories. There'd be no history. It'd just be a bunch of gods running around killing giants, or giants trying to kill gods. Okay? You've got the Aesir. They're no better than gods. You know, Odin says to Loki in the first Thor movie, which is neither a good movie or a bad movie, and you know, Marvel has done more damage to the heathen community. Okay, they've done almost as much damage as the white supremacists, but they've done a lot of damage. Okay, and they said we're not gods. We live longer and we die, and we know that because they're going to die at Ragnarok. I mean, Baldur dies. You know, he's killed by his blind brother Hother. So the gods are not really gods, but to us they are, because they're more powerful, they live longer, they got magic weapons. In fact, they've got magic. You know, hell, let's go with that. So the Aesir, they're not gods. They're about the same size as we are. Odin's got one eye. He runs around Midgard with a black brimmed hat, Gungnir the spear, and two ravens. And if you're lucky enough to have seen them, you're not going to remember until it's too late. It's like seeing the Huldufolk in Iceland. You see them, you turn around, they're gone. You go, I see one of those or not? You're not really sure, okay? Next is the Vanna, a lot like the Aesir, all right? Freyr, Njord, all right? Beautiful people, except Njord. He's got pretty feet, but he's kind of shriveled because he's the god of, you know, he's god of the sea, him and Ron. But anyway, they are just like anybody else, okay? They live, they die. And they make hostages. See, you thought I'd forgotten about that, didn't you? Aha, fooled you. So they give Mimir and Honor, another god, to the Vanna. And the Vanna give Freyr, and Njord to the Aesir. And the Aesir have kept them so long that now most people, even those who pray to one of them, consider them gods. And they're not. They're really elves. Okay? But Mimir and Honor lived with the Vanna. And when the Vanna needed some suggestions or help or whatever, Honor always had this great idea. He was able to give them thoughts. He was able to lead them. Until one day, Mimir wasn't there. And they realized that Honor really was an idiot. Okay? And he had no clue what was going on, but he was getting knowledge from Mimir, who sucked up all the water from his own well. Okay? So the Vanna are so pissed, I cannot imagine why they did this. Instead of cutting off Honor's head, they cut off Mimir's head. And they send it back to Odin, who stuffs it with herbs and magic spices, sort of like KFC. And he keeps it in a bag, so he talks to Mimir's head for advice when he needs it. Okay? And that's still the end of the war. All right. Now, you've got the elves. Let's talk about dwarves. Again, dwarves, they live in the caves. They make great things. They made Gungnir. They made the magic boar of Freyr. They made Mjolnir. They made Brisingamen, which was a great necklace that Freya saw one day, tried to buy, sell. Her husband's off a wandering. We call it Viking, but anyway, he's off and she wants it. And the 4 dwarfs that made it said, shack up with us one night apiece and we'll give it to you. And she said, okay, yeah, like, cool. I'm a valley girl. I can do that. I slept with my brother. I can sleep with you. All right, so they can't be that hideous. Well, they could because she slept with her brother. Anyway, so she sleeps with these 4 dwarfs and she gets this great necklace. All right, so the dwarfs are dwarfs. Finally, you got the giants. We talked about that. They're not ugly. You got gorgeous giants. You got hideous giants. You got pretty giantesses. You got ugly giantesses. You got Angrboda, okay, who is Loki's girlfriend. I don't say wife because Siggy is his wife. And after Loki orchestrates the murder of Balder with Hother, Odin catches him, kills his 2 children with Siggy, takes their entrails, ties him to a rock, puts a vile serpent above him, and Siggy holds the bowl, keeping the venom off him. And when she has to dump it and the venom hits, that's what causes earthquakes. All right. So if you watch the Vikings season 3, I think, Floki and his wife Helga, they basically do the whole thing. But anyway, that's it. So you got all these races that are not hideous, they're not ugly. They all get along, except when they don't. Everybody wants to shack up with Freya. Everybody's trying to kidnap Freya. Thor's always having to save Freya. They should just give Freya away and be done with it and have peace and prosperity. Freya probably wouldn't know the difference because she'll sleep with everything, and that's it. Now, Freya's my patron goddess, so I can talk about the little slut like that. Okay, you can. All right. So you've got all of these great things happening. And I have time, so I'm going to talk about the end of the world. Once upon a time, there were 2 giants, Loki and Angrboda. I love that word, Angrboda. And they had 3 children. They had Fenrir, which was a wolf pup. They had Jormungandr, which was a serpent. And they had Hel, which was a cute little child, but had a dark side. All right. So the Fenrir, or Fenris, depending on who you're reading, starts growing and growing and growing. And the Norns have said that Fenrir will eat the sun and the moon at Ragnarok, which is the end of the world. And if I actually have a Christian watching this, it's our version of Armageddon, but we were here first and you just took it from us, like everything else. Okay? Don't get me started about Christmas trees and Easter eggs and pumpkins and Halloween, and Yule logs, because it won't end well for you. Because we know how to raid, it's like June 6, 793, Vikings 1, Christians nothing. Okay, so at Ragnarok, they need to stop all this happening. So they take the Fenris and they take him up to Asgard, and they want to keep him under control, but he's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So they need to tie him down. So they try ropes and they try chains and they try everything, and he thinks this is fun because he's a dog. He talks, and his mother and father are giantesses, and his brother is a snake serpent, but he's still a wolf. So they decide to go to the dwarves. And the dwarves create a rope called Glypnir. Glypnir is made from 6 different things, some of which is the dew on the grass and the sigh of this and the hair of that and everything. All right, you want to know what it all is, read my book. And they go back up and they say, here's something. Well, Fenris, he may be a wolf, but he's a cunning wolf. And he says, I don't trust y'all. He's a southern wolf. So he says, I will do this, but I want some guarantee. So one of you needs to put your hand in my mouth. And if y'all are not nice and this is a trap, I'm gonna rip that sucker right off your arm. Nobody wanted to do it except Tyr. So Tyr takes his hand, puts it in Fenris, and this is the greatest lie going, saying, this is not a trick, knowing it's a trick. So they bind him down. He realizes it's a trick. He takes the hand off, and they tie him to a rock. So who's the villain here? He is here. All right. Who's the liar here? One-handed Tyr. But who gets sworn in every time you talk about the most honest God? And I swear by Tyr, I cry foul on that one. You can't put your hand on the Havamal and say, I swear to tell the truth by Tyr, knowing that son of a bitch lied to get what he wanted. Okay? So there's another one I'm going to probably burn in hell for somewhere by saying that. Anyway, Jormungandr, the serpent, is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So Odin sticks him in the water around Midgard, and he bites his own tail. And supposedly, when he lets his tail loose, Ragnarok will begin. Fenris will shake his bonds. Loki will get out, and they'll start. Now, before that happens, and I cry foul again, Odin really wasn't too cool on this because Thor went fishing for Jormungandr, caught him one day, and had to throw him back because one of the people in the boat with him, who happened to be a giant, was afraid, and he cut the leader. So if Thor actually caught Jormungandr, that meant that Jormungandr took his tail out of his mouth, which means Ragnarok would have started. So there's another inconsistency that no one talks about, okay? So finally, all right, Fenrir escapes, Jormungandr escapes, Loki escapes. All of the dead down here in Helheim break out of Helheim and cross Bifrost and fight at Midgard. Now, not only nasty, dirty, rotten oath breakers, murderers, and those types live in Helheim. All right? Asgard gets fighters. Right? If you live a good life and you die in your beds, you're SOL. And that means Svartalheim out of luck. All right? You're still going to go to Helheim, but you're going to go to a higher level of Helheim. So Helheim isn't just all this, lava and nastiness and Nihog eating your corpses and everything. There are levels, sort of like Dante's 9 levels in his Inferno. So if you're old and talented and you die in your sleep, you have a car accident and you didn't die in battle, or you don't have what it takes to be a warrior, Freya and or Odin are not going to get you. Okay, hell's going to get you. But if you got talent, you're going to go to a village somewhere in Helheim, and it's going to be just kind of like what it is here. You're going to build shit during the day. You're going to drink and sleep and eat and wait for Ragnarok. All right? And here's another thing. They say that everybody in Helheim, okay, has to fight everybody in Asgard. Again, I call foul because Balder went to Helheim because he died. Okay, he was murdered and he didn't die in battle, so he went to Helheim. Right? And another story tells about how his mother tried to get everybody to give it up, and Loki screwed them all, and he stayed in Helheim. Okay. However, when Ragnarok happens, he leaves Helheim, he goes home and fights for the Aesir. So not everybody in Helheim is going to fight for Hel, which I think is kind of rude because she's feeding all these people. All right. I mean, Odin doesn't care. I wouldn't want to, well, I don't know. Depends on whether or not they give me a puppy when I go to Hell. So anyway, or cats. I always said that I wanted to go to Folkvang because Freya has all sorts of cats, and I'm a cat person. But now I got Asa, so maybe if Asa and I go to Hell, I could build shit for Hell until it's all over. Anyway, so that's another inconsistency. So they fight, big plane, big battle. Okay. If you want to see what it's going to kind of look like, go to ska.org and look up one of the big wars, or put in Pensic battle, Pennscic, in YouTube, and you'll see 2,000 or 3,000 people fighting in armor. Now make that millions, okay, and then add giants who really aren't giants, and trolls who may or may not be trolls, and the dead, which may or may not look like the dead, and that's kind of like what it looks like. Okay, so Odin dies, Thor dies, Loki dies, Heimdall dies, Jormungandr dies, Fenris dies, Freyr dies, Njord goes back to Vanaheim. Nobody knows what happens to Freya. Right? Balder becomes one of the new gods. In fact, he becomes one of the head gods. Right? Vili, which is one of Thor's kids, gets the hammer. Okay, gets Mjolnir, even though he's a giant's kid, and his real kid with Sif is a girl, and she doesn't get the hammer, which I think is really, whacked out. And it starts all over again. Okay? Two humans hiding inside Yggdrasil step out after Surta takes his flaming sword and destroys everything. For Ragnarok, last scene. Really, really close to it. Okay? Then goes back and sits on his fiery throne. He was there at the beginning, he's there at the end. But what happens? They start all over again. New Asgard, new Midgard. All these planets go over. And who's there left? Our girl Hel. Still sitting on her throne, still doing her thing, still having a good time, petting Nihog and throwing corpses, and nothing changes. Right? So that's how it began. That's how it ends. Right? Now, I have got, it looks like 11 minutes. Yeah, my moderator here says I'm right, 11 minutes. So I'm going to answer some questions that you didn't ask. All right? Because I get questions all the time like this. All right. First of all, Thor will fight anything. He doesn't care. Okay? He's not too bright. He's not too patient. He doesn't really have that good eyesight. He's very strong, but he's stronger with his magic belt and his magic gloves, which no one ever talks about, and his hammer with the stubby hand. And this is another sore spot of me and Marvel, because they have this beautiful hammer. The reason they did it is because of balance, because they had to be able to throw it up, spin it, and catch it. And it really doesn't look like that. It's got a short handle because Loki made a bet that the dwarves could not make the perfect gifts, and you're going to have to read about the rest of them. And as a fly, he kept one of the dwarfs from making it hot enough, and the handle got short, but it still worked because it was from the heart of a star, and he's got Mjolnir. So that's another thing that I really have an issue with all these new stories. All right. Another one is Freya. Freya's got a magic cloak that turns her into a hawk that allows her to fly all over the place. Does she do anything with it? No. She lends it to Loki so he can get out of trouble for causing the trouble in the first place. Okay? So it doesn't do him any good. Excuse me. Cough medicine. Got to take my medicine. Anyway, Odin got one eye, got two ravens, Munin and Hugin, memory and thought, sends them out every day. They come back every night. They're sort of like Memorex. You know, they tell him what's going on. Does he trust them? I don't know. Would you trust a raven that came back and told you strange stories? So he takes them, gets on his horse Sleipnir, wanders off through the world, kind of leaving Asgard on its own. Okay? Now, Sleipnir, here's a story you gotta love. In the beginning, there was a great void right here. Okay? And Asgard was afraid, the Asgardians, the gods, were afraid of the giants. So they said, we need a wall. And this guy shows up, and he's got a horse, and he says, I'll build you a wall. I'll do it in a year. But I want Freya as my wife, and I want the sun and the moon. Well, of course, they're not going to go along with that. And Freya's like, hell no, I'm not going to. I might sleep with him, but I'm not going to marry him. So Loki says, yeah, we can do this. Trust me, it's okay. So they agree. And the horse does 10 times the work that it should as a horse. And they're going, and it's getting closer and closer and closer. And soon they discover that that guy and that horse is about to finish the job. And they figure out he's a giant. Now, here's another thing I don't understand. Loki's a giant, okay? Thor's mother is a giant. His grandmother's a giant. He sees giants every day. You're going to tell me he can't tell it's a friggin' giant? Especially if you go with the classic giant and not the new age giant that are cute and cuddly, but the big ugly giants. Some big ugly giant with a big horse shows up that looks like a freaking Clydesdale on steroids and says, hi, I'm a mason, I'll build your wall. They don't figure that out. So the night before, Loki, who's a shapeshifter, turns into a mare and leads the stallion off. All right? A few months later, they discover it didn't work. Giant gets killed. Everybody's happy. Horse comes back. Loki comes back with a foal with 8 legs. Tell me that's not some screwed up horse sex. Okay? 8 legs. Sleipnir. All right? So Loki gets a Father's Day card and a Mother's Day card every year. It's not bad. All right. So that's how that happens. All right? If you want any more stories, as I tell my lovely wife when she's complaining, suck it up, Buttercup. You're going to have to buy the book. I went into Barnes & Noble the other day, and they got 3 new books out on Norse sagas, and they call them myths. You know, that it's actually the truth. If you want a myth, read that other book with the red lettering. And I'm not talking about The Princess Bride. So anyway, they got 3 new books out. I looked through them. Not a single one is as comprehensive in the stories as mine. So if you want a really comprehensive book, it's called Norse Divination, No idea what the publisher's calling it after that. It's Norse Divination : something. If you ever want to write a book, you have to have two titles. It has to be a title, then there has to be a colon, then there has to be a second thing. It's almost like it's almost like a law now. I'm surprised, even the Bible, it's like the Bible, colon, a bunch of guys telling stories. Okay, that's the way it works. Or the Havamal, colon, Odin spouting off while drinking mead. All right, so it's colon something. But anyway, it'll be out in the spring. Llewellyn is publishing it. It's a really cool book. And that's about it, folks. I got not much else going on. So I'm going to look at my moderator, and if she nods at me, I'm going to say, catch you on the flip side.
Hey, thank you so much, Gypsy. This was so interesting. And I remember doing your workshop at Mystic South and taking a bunch of notes, and I know I didn't spell anything right, so I can't wait to see the picture, because I know how to spell like the Greco-Roman names, and your Norse names just kind of, they're hard on me.
They're hard on everybody. They really are. You can tell someone who's learned Norse, which is really Icelandic. You can tell how they learned it by how they pronounce stuff. Because if they learned it naturally, then they skip a whole bunch of words and letters and get the same idea. It's amazing. When I take tours to Iceland, they look at me like I'm like if I'm saying something I've never said before, they look at me like I've got two heads. Because it's like, what? It's like, sorry, how do you say that? And that's basically the trick. We've got 32 letters in Icelandic, and we don't even use all the 26 that the English have. We only use 24 of them, and we only used one of those 24 until modern day time. Now we use them all the time in other languages. Like if you're spelling Chevrolet or something, you'll use all the letters. But in Icelandic, you won't use certain letters. Like there's no C in Icelandic. It isn't there.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because they got a K.
Mm-hmm.
So you won't see it. So there's another one. It skips mine. But then you've got things like th and f, and eighth, and every vowel has another iteration. So every vowel A, E, I, O, U, and Y has A/E/I/. Then they got completely off the wall ones, like the th and the f and the ace, AE. So it's just one of those things.
Well, and you said your book will be out in the spring. That's spring 2021 through Llewellyn, and it's
coming out in the spring catalog. So it'll probably be out summer. But I believe Llewellyn can probably take advanced orders once the spring catalog comes out, or at least watch for it. And it's going to be on Amazon, of course, and Barnes and Noble and all those. But it's also going to be at your local bookstores. And if shop local, go to your local heathen pagan store and say, I want Gypsy's Norse Divination, and have them order it, because they can order it just as easily. It's also available on Kindle if you want to do that. But I don't trust people that use Kindles. And I don't trust, and I put this in the book, I don't trust people that have books that are pristine. I mean, that book should be a grimoire. If you've got a book, write in it. Take notes. If something works, if a spell works, write in it. This is not a spell book, but it's a divination book. And if you get a different reading and you get the same reading all the time, write it down. Because obviously that rune, and they're not runes. That's the thing about this Norse Divination book. They are not runes. They're totally different. They're totally Norse. Um, but if you say you get Odin, you get the Odin stone, and if you're getting something totally different from what I say or somebody else says, write it down. Remember it, because obviously Odin wants you to do this. So anyway, and if you're pagan, you must buy my other book, Witch's Guide to Wands.
It's such a good book.
It is a good book. I've got a blacksmith company up in Michigan that now stock it because it also talks about the properties and hardness scales of over 100 woods, and they use them for the scales of their knives. So it's one of the Forge and Fire winners, and a bunch of them got together and they have a forge up in a store up in Michigan, and they stocked my book for blacksmiths.
Well, I think that witches who use wands would do well. Wow, that's a lot of W's. To get your book because then you know you know what the wood came from, what tree it is, and you can learn more of the different properties of it and new ways to work with your wand.
Yeah, because some woods don't like each other.
Right.
We've proven that many times. Some woods get along really well. Some woods not so much. Some not at all. So anyway,
Well, thank you very much, Gypsy. You're gonna send me the link to your picture of
I'm gonna send you the picture in a minute. As soon as I get my phone, I'll send it to you. I'm gonna take a picture of this screen for you, and I'll take a picture of all the little guys so you can figure out what they actually look like.
Yay, and I'll put them all at the end of the video. And
Okay.
once your book is out, when and this goes up on YouTube, I'll put links so people can look them up on Amazon to get the information to bring to their local bookseller.
I will put the little guys in order so you can look at them as the video goes. So I'll start with Surta and I'll end with Hel and Loki and Angadavatha, and I'll put them all up so you can actually follow along. Okay, I look like Mitch. God, what was his name? The guy with the bouncing ball that you sang along with.
I
Something.
don't remember
Uh,
his name.
Yeah, I can't remember. Same time as Lonswell, he came out and the little it was like early karaoke and you anyway, I look like him. Anyway, catch you later. Bye.
Love you, Gypsy.
Love you too.
Right.